my biggest thing is I'm trying to find the things that I feel are unique. It's kind of like my perspective, where I feel like usually people wouldn't be recording this part because it feels like it's off topic or it feels like it's not perfect or whatever. That's where I'm like, okay, I really want to turn the camera on now. So it's like, I want to get the big hero shots and get the shot at sunset and use that magic light and like create some of the really beautiful things and put the drone up possibly and like do some of that stuff. But also, after we've unloaded the boat and we're going to the weird ass local drive through or whatever, like how many times have you ever seen people go through a drive through on a fishing video, or like the things that you wouldn't think should be a part of it, but are a part of it that you don't often see? That's what
100%.
really resonates with me personally. So that's kind of what I try to capture.
Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to Your Creative Roadmap, Episode 2. My name is Austin Heisler. I'm a van lifer, entrepreneur, fine artist. I own a social media company, a streetwear company, and I am now a podcaster. My goal with this podcast is to encourage and inspire young creatives to let them know that the creative journey is possible. You just have to stick to it and play the long game. This is a conversation with my friend John Holdmeier, who is the founder of a company called Actual Outdoors. They specialize in creating brands for outdoor companies from the start to the visual aspect of the brand. If you're a designer and you want to get into branding, this is the podcast for you. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Let's jump into it. We are live on episode 2 of Your Creative Roadmap podcast. John, let's just start by kind of giving us, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for the outdoor industry.
We'll start with my name. I'm John Holdmeier. I've been in the outdoor industry for a long time. I'm probably 20 years now at this point, if you count my start in retail when I was like 16. So I've been at it for quite a while. I'm in Missouri, so based in Columbia, Missouri. A lot of people don't think about the outdoor industry or the outdoor space and, have Missouri pop to mind immediately, but we have a lot of really awesome outdoor stuff here. We're right at the northern edge of the Ozarks where I am, so we have beautiful streams to float and fish that are spring fed and have water year round. Have a little bit of whitewater in the southern part of the state. We have really good mountain biking everywhere, especially down in the southern part of the state. The mountain bike scene is really growing around Bentonville and Springfield and a lot of the southern Missouri and northern Arkansas spots. So tons of good hiking, backpacking, all that sort of stuff. So we have quite a bit here, even though it's not necessarily kind of considered an outdoor space. And there's a decent amount of outdoor industry stuff that is based here in Missouri and has started in Missouri. So yeah, my journey started working retail, when I was 16 at the local gear shop. I'm from the St. Louis area. So that was the Alpine shop. And I was like, I couldn't have been more excited to talk to people about kayaks. Whitewater kayaking and fly fishing are my two favorite things outside. So I got to go in and talk to people about kayaks, and it was a pretty awesome way to get started in the outdoor space. And it's kind of just like grown from there to where now I'm started my own business 2 years ago called Actual Outdoors. And so we do brand identity work, brand strategy work, and also creative work, photography and videography and stuff like that. So we've been going for 2 years now. But that's kind of the synopsis. I can get into as much more as you'd like to hear.
That is so awesome to hear that you started in retail and now to owning your own business, to working on content production, marketing, and things like that. But to get this podcast started, I always like to do a little bit of icebreakers, and I'm a big music person. So, John, what are you listening to right now?
Oh, that's a great question. It's been funny the last several years. I have gotten so into listening to podcasts and listening to books and audio stuff that I listen to music for fun much less than I used to. And I every time I get back into listening, I'm like, why am I not just listening to music more? Like I'm always trying to learn and educate myself. And I feel like there's this thing that I've been missing recently of like just really letting myself listen to a ton of music. For me though, it's hip hop is my favorite thing. So I kind of like most types of music. There's nothing that I'm really kind of like, nah, that's not for me. I grew up on country music. I don't really listen to country as much anymore, but definitely, hip hop and a little bit of folk, kind of folk Americana. Really big Jason Isbell fan. So that style of folk music, but then also anything, new hip hop related. I love, I really like this guy, Coda the Friend, kind of like chill, lo-fi beats with kind of like a slower, more chill take on the lyricism, but anything old 90s hip hop as well is kind of in my always in my rotation because I grew up on stuff like Tribe Called Quest and De La Soul and all that sort of stuff. So I'd say for sure hip hop is kind of my go-to, but I'll kind of listen to or try anything.
I just imagine you fly fishing, kayaking, blasting some Tribe Called Quest, down the river.
It is.
So
It
cool,
is.
man.
Yeah. It's almost always hip hop in the boat. We have the drift boat that we fish out of, and everybody's usually playing their country music in Arkansas, and we're listening to like high quality hip hop, but also like some kind of less high quality hip hop as well while we're going down the river. So I think there was a trip this summer where I played exclusively Daddy Yankee's new album just on repeat.
goodness.
And so yeah, it was not really a hit with the rest of the boat necessarily, but it got me going. So
Yeah. Dude, you said hip hop. Have you heard? I just recently heard of this band called Girl Talk, or it's like a group called Girl Talk, and they just take all these like 2000s and like 80s like pop dance club hits and mix it together. And my mind is like blown. I was like, oh my gosh.
yeah, Girl Talk is awesome. That was definitely the theme music to some of our parties that we threw when I was in school. They've been I don't know if it's a person or a group, but they've been around for since I was in school at least, so
Yeah.
a while. But
Yeah.
yeah, I love Girl Talk. That's good stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So I kind of want to hear about this journey from being in retail to becoming a content creator and business owner. What was something what inspired you to like want to make content for the outdoors and to want to get into the branding aspect of it all? Because there's so much stuff that you could do in the outdoor industry, like talking about it, but you specifically went into branding and content creation. Like what sparked your interest in that side of the outdoors?
Yeah, so my outdoor industry journey has been kind of all encompassing. I didn't design it. It wasn't a planned out thing. It just kind of happened the way it happened. So I started working retail and then went to work for a brand that's based here in Missouri called Alps Mountaineering. And so they were actually, the founder of Alps was a Kelty, I think product manager or brand manager. And Kelty used to be based in my hometown here in Missouri. And then they moved out to Colorado. And so a lot of people stayed behind from that and started their own outdoor companies or continued to work in the space. So that kind of shaped my outdoor industry career as I went to work for Alps in product development because I wanted to learn more about how the products were made and how to create and design better product. And that was kind of my first initial interest was in the product side of things. And then was recruited from Alps to work for another company called HKD, where we were the manufacturer, the OEM manufacturer of camping equipment. So we made camping tents for everybody from Coleman to Walmart to Dick's Sporting Goods, Academy Sporting Goods. We made their in-house brand camping tents and gear. And so while I was there, I was able to really get into the design and actually got to go live overseas every other month for about a month at a time in our factories and get to design the products and walk customers through the factory and show them, here's how we make this, here's your tent that we're working on, and here's, what we think you should come out with next season, and really get in-depth knowledge on the camping industry and camping tent design. And so through that process, I also started really having to think about the brand aspect of everything, because we were making these products for each individual brand. So I started to do analysis, like look at what does Coleman really need for this next season? What are they missing? What could I help that would fill their product line and their product market fit? And so it really kind of expanded how I was thinking about telling the stories around the products that we were making. And then also my company that I was working for started to launch their own brands in Korea. It was a Korean-owned company. And so we launched our own in-house brands in Korea and Japan, and then started to do the same thing in the US as well. And so that really got me to put a marketing hat on to help with those efforts and start to research how to build a brand around the product that we were making for the Korean market or for the Japanese market. And that was super interesting. I loved that job and that company. I learned a ton. That was like 3.5 years, probably 3 years, maybe a little longer, of working in the factory, where the gear was being made. So I kind of had just been chasing this, like, I want to get as close to how the gear is made as possible, kind of dream. And so that was awesome. And then once I got that marketing experience and really started to play with the marketing side of things and the brand side of things, recruited to another company here in Columbia, Missouri. They were a big parent company. They are a big parent company that owns a lot of smaller companies. And one of the companies they had acquired was a camping brand, and they needed a brand manager. So that's more of a marketing position traditionally. And so I joined that company and led a really big rebrand effort for UST, which it used to be Ultimate Survival Technologies. And it was kind of along the lines of like a Bear Grylls survivalist gear kind of thing. So you might even have some of it in your own camping stuff. It was this little orange accessory kind of stuff. So that's what, UST was known for. And most people, like when I was approached about the position, I didn't know what Ultimate Survival Technologies was necessarily, but the recruiter told me, he said it's the little orange accessory items that you have in your camp kit. And they made everything from like a waterproof match container to waterproof fire starters to all these little orange accessory items. And I actually, once he said that, I like went and looked in my camping bin, and I was like, oh yeah, I've got like 5 things, because they had so many products with really good distribution. And so what we did is we retooled that, because there's only so many small, cheap things you can continue to make. And we wanted to address the larger camping market as like a core camping brand. So we rebranded and came out with more core camping items like tents, sleeping bags, some of the bigger items. And we switched the brand identity completely. So it was this bright, new, fun, blue was our main color, with a new logo, new persona, new brand identity, new everything, to try to speak to the more modern, camping audience, because it had become a little dated. The brand started in 1936. So it had been around for a long time, and we needed to refresh it to speak to the more modern audience, and the core camping audience more broadly. But our focus was on inclusivity and making the outdoors feel more inviting, and less of previously it had been more like harsh, like a kind of like Bear Grylls go outside and fight death kind of experience, Mm-hmm. So that was really fun. It was really successful, but being in the office was a real struggle for me, and it always has been. Sitting in an office has never been one of my strengths. I need to get outside and go do things more than I was able to with that job. So I always knew that I would leave and start my own thing eventually. And through that process, that rebranding process, we worked with a lot of outside creative people who did really beautiful creative work. But I kept running into this issue of, we wanted our brand to be about approachability and authenticity. And we kept getting back this really beautiful but staged photography and staged videos and these things that only looked really epic and were like beautiful sunset pictures of a blue lake over, like everything you've seen on Instagram a million times, right? And so I think a lot of creatives get into that trap of like, if it's not the most amazing, beautiful, perfectly staged with the product in the foreground, kind of look, then they worry that it's not going to be well received by the brand, because that's what so many brands are looking for. Our brand was not looking for that, and I struggled to find it outside of our own team. We found a few really great partners and worked with some great people, but that struggle to find a more authentic creative aspect is what made me want to make my next venture, my own business, be about providing that, working with the brand identity to start from, the brand identity and the mission and the vision and the values and all of those things really drive everything that comes after that forever. And there's something that people should always be referring back to. So for me, it was really important to still be able to do that work that I really love to do, but also to get into the visual side of things with my new company and tell those more authentic stories that aren't perfectly staged, that show the mess, that show, the mistakes, that show the things that are actually real about the outdoor experience, and make it feel relatable and attainable, and not like it's some, summit 14er summit photo. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I think those things are great. And those summit selfie kind of photos and the really beautiful stage stuff, all of that is a part of the outdoor space. I just think there's plenty of that on Instagram and on the internet. And so my goal and our goal with Actual Outdoors is to be more authentic and feel more approachable in how we show what we do. And to speak to the other part of your question, the visual storytelling side of things has always been a part of it for me as well. Even from when I was a little kid, I was making kayaking videos. I started whitewater kayaking when I was really young. And so I was like 12, 13, 14, making kayak videos on like a mini DV camera and like the first generation GoPro. And like, putting together kayak videos that were like, not great, but it was still fun to do. And then, so I've always been into that side of everything. And through my experience with HKD, where we made those products for some of those big companies, I got more into product photography a little bit, trying to take the photos for packaging for the companies that we were working with. So I would design the tent, and I would get to, decide what style the tent needs to be, and then the colors and everything to the structure. And then also, once it was finished, I was the one who was setting it up and taking photos of it for the final packaging as well. So I kind of I was able to learn and further my skills there in a more professional way through that product photography. And that just has carried on as like a thing that I love to do. I find my flow while I'm out fly fishing, while I'm out kayaking, or while I'm out like taking photos or taking videos outside and trying to capture like an authentic version of the story,
You spoke something. You said that you were focused on authenticity, and I feel like all marketing efforts are moving towards that way. With the coming of TikTok and YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels, like the more authentic videos is what's getting more traction and more engagement over videos that are like staged or just super high production. So moving forward, do you feel like if somebody wants to create content in the outdoors, like that's younger, like moving forward, do you see us moving more towards the authentic footage, or do you feel like it's going to go back to like this high production? Like, where do you see the future of content production in the outdoor space if somebody wants to do that, like perhaps for a job and they're in high school or college?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely going to continue to be a push for authenticity in marketing and in visual storytelling specifically. My thought is that you can be incredibly authentic and have really high production value still, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that the production value can be really high and it can still be authentic. You could also have something that's completely fabricated and non-authentic, but be a little lower quality, you can create that authentic look, even if it's not
Yes.
an authentic thing, right? So I think about the production value quite a bit, but also like I think it's going to be more and more people relating to other people.
Yeah.
So it's like as long as what you're talking about is true and you're being authentic, like as a brand for your audience, then I think that whether it's high production or it's a lower production, iPhone, reel creation, I think that both of those things will continue to exist. I don't know. I couldn't predict if, the lower resolution iPhone creation kind of stuff, if that will continue to grow. You see a lot of stuff now with like a real retro vibe that looks like it was shot on like a early 2000s, digital camera or whatever. Like, and
Yeah.
most of that is like a filter or it's like however people are doing it. I think some of that will continue to be popular. It just depends on each brand and what their identity as a brand is and how they feel they should communicate.
Mhm.
And so I see it going forward in a lot of different directions, but at the core of it, I think brand marketing in general will just have to be more about the people and about the true stories. And
Yeah.
um, I don't see that changing at all. I think that, people, millennials and younger generations are kind of fed up with the big brand, fake storytelling, product based, feature based marketing. It just doesn't work the way it used to. And so I think that that trend will continue to grow, where it has to be more relatable and has to focus on people and how the product or the brand will help their life and help the planet and help whatever other thing that they care about. And that's the cool thing is each brand gets to know what's most important to it as a brand and how it wants to communicate those true things to people. Brands are becoming more and more like little communities. There are some brands that do it really well and some brands that do it in like a manufactured way that's just a way to try to sell more things. So I think some of that will get weeded out by people responding to what actually works for them. And yes, I think it's a really interesting time to be in the creative space or to be a consumer in general, especially here in the US, but worldwide. Like, I think things are shifting to focus more and more and more on the consumer and less on the brand talking about itself. So I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I feel like that's what marketing is all about, right? It's just communicating to your consumer, and I wholeheartedly believe the concept that if you tell a good story with your brand, it doesn't matter what the product is. Like, if it's a good product, the story will sell itself. You're not going to need to tell people about it or tell people like what it can do or how it can help you. You just need to tell that great story and invoke those emotions. And going on that, you talk about building or creating these authentic moments and capturing them. What does your process look like when you are out there and you're shooting some footage for a brand and you want to create these authentic moments, without completely like staging them? Like, what does your process look like? Are you just out there with a camera and you're just living life like out on the streams and kayaking, or do you have things that you do to be able to create those authentic moments? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, forming the relationship with whoever you're out shooting with. And,
Mm-hmm.
for me, I get to work with my partner, Lindsay, on a lot of things. And I'll shoot with friends quite often, or people that I know. And so I think having that relationship is really important. And then my strategy is always just to try to be as much of a fly on the wall as I can be and not build things up and stage them, but
Yeah.
product wise, say it's apparel or whatever, if you have the apparel on, then let's just go have a fun day outside and I'm going to kind of be a fly on the wall. My biggest thing is I'm trying to find the things that I feel are unique. It's kind of like my perspective, where I feel like usually people wouldn't be recording this part, because it feels like it's off topic or it feels like it's not perfect or whatever. That's where I'm like, okay, I really want to turn the camera on now, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, I want to get the big hero shots and get the shot at sunset and use that magic light and like create some of the really beautiful things and put the drone up possibly and like do some of that stuff. But also, you know, after we've unloaded the boat and we're going to the weird ass local drive through or whatever, you know, like how many times have you ever seen people go through a drive through on a fishing video, or like the things that you wouldn't think should be a part of it, but are a part
Yeah.
of it that you don't often see? That's what really
100%.
resonates with me personally. So that's kind of what I try to capture.
By you filming all the time, like you almost create this story, right? Of when you go outside, yeah, like the trip on the boat is great or floating down the river, but like there's also so many funny parts of it. Like sometimes like the best memories I have of going outside is like not being there, but it's like going there or packing up or going out to eat with my friends afterwards, you know. And I feel like by constantly like keeping that camera rolling and by like shooting that, like you make so much more of a diverse story. It's like, yes, the climax might be that hero shot, but it's like, let's build to get there. Let's create some funny moments to get to there. And then let's like bring it back down. You know, it's like you almost are creating this like arching storyline by constantly like having that. And I feel like, do you ever like put that to like, how would you take those moments and market it on social media? Like you have this story that you captured, like what does your strategy look like for then executing that story on social media?
Yeah, I think it's always just so unique, you know, depending on what the brand is looking for or what the project calls for. I personally, I try to fit as much of that stuff in there as I possibly can, you know.
Yeah.
It's tough because you're always kind of going back and forth between uh, what the audience attention span is going to be, if it's for Reels or if it's for TikTok or whatever, versus how much of the story can you actually tell. So it's always finding a balance, you know, of, okay, people really just want to see 6 shots really quick of huge fish being held up, you know, and that's the only thing that's going to work, right? But then sometimes I'll do, if that's the case, then I'll do my own personal cut to try to share, or you know, try to figure out how to also use that other footage in some way. But I think that's just something that you have to continually be thinking about the brand that you're
Yeah.
working with. And that's where I feel like my strength from having that brand knowledge is like, I'm always thinking about, okay, this is for this brand and this is their voice and this is their tone. And, you know, they would be a brand that really would benefit from showing this goofy moment or whatever, versus this is a brand that's a little more serious and their target is a little, you know, more, you know, this, whatever, X, Y, and Z. And that might not resonate with their audience quite as well. So I think keeping that in mind is the real focus on the execution.
Yeah.
Like, what is the actual goal that you're going after? And what are you trying to communicate? And if you can use those things, and that's where I try to partner with clients, you know, that understand my approach and understand showing the authenticity, because I want to use that as a tool, right, to communicate. So, yeah, that's kind of how I approach it.
It all goes down to the brand tone and the brand voice and what is their goal and what is their mission. Reeling it back, when you're thinking of a brand and you have this project or this product that you, let's say you get a new client and they want you to create their brand from scratch. Like they have a really great product that works really well. What do you do to get creative? Like, do you have like create like a mood board, or do you like get together with a bunch of people in a room to like think of like how this brand is going to speak to the consumer? What does that process look like?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, it's a really involved process, and it does, you know, all of those things you mentioned are part of the process. It starts with really getting to know the people with a vested interest, be it the CEO, the founder, the CMO, whoever it is that's in charge and gets to make those decisions. But also it needs to be somebody who really knows the story of the brand and the company. And so it's having conversations with those people and asking them a lot of questions, getting to the core of why they started this thing or why they're doing this thing, why they make this product, who does it help, a lot of really detailed questions about all of those things. And I'll ask those questions multiple ways, throughout the process to see what kind of difference I get in the answers and see what common themes come up. And then I go back through and I look for common themes through the answers. So if they say the same phrase like 8 times in different answers about different things, I know that it's probably pretty important to the core of who they are, right? And so I try to get the truth from them about their brand and about their company. And then once we have all that information, it's about synthesizing that information into things that make sense, like the mission and the vision and the values, taking all of those things, creating something, and then going to them and showing them, here, we've created this thing. We think this is what your mission is, and we think this is your vision. And then there's usually back and forth there where they say, that is accurate, but this word doesn't fit. So let's change this around. And we really spend a lot of time getting those things right before we start anything mood board or visual or anything like that, because all of the visual aspects should be a result of the identity work that has been done. And then the identity work that has been done should be authentic to the brand, and it should also consider the consumer personas, right? So it's about saying, here's this brand and their true story, and it's really raw, a bunch of data from questions I've asked. And then here's the consumer that they're trying to speak to. And how do we get those two things to talk to each other? And what would make sense to create that conversation between those two parties? And then taking all of that information, then we go to like the mood board stage of, here are several directions we could go. Here's what we think fits. And then I get to work with my partner, Lindsay, or with, another designer, because I don't do the visual design part of things. I don't have that skill necessarily. So I get to work with a talented designer to develop the visual side of the logo, the typography, the color palette, all of those visual elements that help tell that story that we've worked hard to develop.
What does that relationship look like between you and the designer? Like, are you guys in like constant like communication? Like, how does that relationship work between you two?
It's just, collaboration and conversation. And usually I try to get all of the information synthesized and small enough that it's enough for them to make a really impactful design. I try to give it just depends. I try to give a little bit of direction visually. Sometimes we'll include like inspiration of like, here are several styles of logo or several brands that, could be inspiration for this. But then I try to be kind of hands off through the first ideation stage, because designers, in my experience, every designer I've worked with works best when they get to do their creative thing, and they need the information, they need the input. Then for that first stage is just like I'm stepping back and letting them do a bunch of sketches and a bunch of thinking and a bunch of come back to the table with a bunch of ideas that we then get to hold up to that information and say, oh wow, like these 5 ideas really make the most sense with the information that we have. And so it's definitely collaborative, but I also try to create space where it's needed. So it's definitely a balance of communication.
Yeah. And something that you just said that I want to touch on for any of the young listeners, the young designers that are listening to this is he said, oh, maybe these 5 designs would work, whenever you're coming up with the design, or if you want to be a designer for like a company, for somebody like John, it is so important to come up with multiple concepts, not just one concept. Come up with multiple things, really expand your thinking, because that's what's gonna help. If John had a designer come up with just one thing, he'd be like, where's the rest? Like, it's so important to expand your thinking, and it's okay, I would say, for this process to take a little bit too. If you need to take your time and really think outside this, like John just went over all this stuff, that goes in the process of making a brand, coming up with a design, doing the thinking beforehand. This stuff takes time. So if you want to be a designer, and you really love what we're like talking about, like that is just important. That'd be some of my advice that I would give to you, is just whenever you're coming up with a brand design or a logo for a client, think of multiple ideas, really expand your thinking, but also really go back to the true root of like what the brand stands for. And that's like the tone of the voice, who they are, who their customer is, and then all this information will give you what you need to make a great design.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think the other thing that's hard or that I've run into is difficult a lot of times is, designers want to only really show a perfect finished product. And so the thing about, the collaborative process with somebody like me who's doing the brand identity work, it's fun to build those relationships where, a designer can come to me and say, look, these aren't perfect. I haven't polished these ideas yet, but here are the 5 things, because it would take them way too long to finish and polish and refine 5 different ideas, right? So they can come to me with a more raw kind of general concept, 5 general concepts that are visual. And then we can go, okay, yeah, this is the one we're going to spend a lot of time refining,
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a process, man. It's a process of collaboration and being afraid to make those like creative mistakes, because you never know that one, like when you're like, oh, I kind of messed up. As an artist, some of the best work that I've done has been happy accidents that I've done something I'm like, oh, that actually looks like pretty sweet.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with that, man. Just starting off with the raw and then just continuing on and making that better. But I think we're getting close to the end here. So, John, is there anything you want to plug? Like, what are you working on? Just like let us know, like, if there what you're doing right now, and the floor is yours to plug your business and what you do.
Yeah, I mean, I just say check out actualoutdoors.com. That's my main thing right now, is trying to build this. I'll say, we're almost 2 years into it right now, and it's been a wild ride of ups and downs and like, plenty of work at times and then not enough clients at other times. And so I would say, know that you're going to have ups and downs like that.
Yeah.
But, we have several projects kind of in the works right now, some of which I can't really talk to yet. One that I am really excited about, though, is a longer form visual story that's going to be like a kind of mini doc style video.
Yeah.
There's this awesome fly fishing guide in Crested Butte, Erica Nelson. She goes by the name The Awkward Angler. And she is a female native fly fishing guide. And there are not many of them in the US. And she does amazing stuff getting people out on the water, working to get more native women involved in the outdoors and in fly fishing, and trying to diversify fly fishing as a sport. And so I was out there recently shooting a ton of footage and hanging out and having a blast with her. And that's got a long tail on it probably for when it's actually going to be finished, but that would be the one I'm probably most excited about and would tell people to kind of keep an eye out for. We'll have it up on the website once we do get finished with that project. But yeah, that's the main thing.
Awesome, man. John, this has been such a pleasure, man. It's been great talking to you and hearing your story and what you do, man. And I'm excited to follow you and see this mini documentary when it comes out.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I really appreciate you having me. And likewise, I just, thanks for the opportunity.
All right. Thank you so much.